of comparable oils. Chicago soy oil, European rapeseed, and Malaysian palm oil are in negative territory. Crude oil is also seeing a decline as negotiations progress over the release of hostages between Israel and Hamas. The Canadian dollar is down more than 1/3 of a U.S. cent compared to Thursday's close. The March canola contract is down $3.80 per ton at $597.40. In the U.S., corn and soybeans are lower while wheat is on the rise. The U.S. Department of Agriculture reported on Thursday that 481.7 million bushels of corn were used to produce ethanol in December, well above trade estimates, a 5% increase from November and the highest producing month since August 2018. StoneX forecasted total Brazilian corn production at 124.5 million tons, down 100,000 from last month's estimate. A USDA attaché raised its estimate for Argentine corn production by 2 million tons to 57 million. The March corn contract is down 3 U.S. cents per bushel at $4.45. The USDA's monthly fats and oils report showed that U.S. processors crushed 204.3 million bushels of soybeans in December, a record for any month, but it was still 2.2 million bushels less than the trade expected. U.S. oil stocks rose to 1.832 billion pounds, up 232 million from November, but down 483 million from a year earlier. The U.S. Energy Information Administration reported that soy oil use for biofuels in November was 1.062 billion pounds. The seventh straight month, the number surpassed 1 billion. StoneX lowered its Brazilian soybean production estimate by 2.45 million tons at 150.35 million. Its export forecast was also cut by 2 million tons at 93 million. The March soybean contract is down 3 U.S. cents per bushel at $12 even. The Canadian Grain Commission reported 340,800 tons of wheat exports through licensed facilities during the week ended January 28th, the lowest number in 3 weeks. Cumulative exports totaled 10.49 million tons for the marketing year, up 5.7% from the same period last year. The trade is expecting the USDA to raise its estimate for Australia's wheat crop by 1.5 to 2 million tons, while cutting European Union production estimates. Taiwan purchased nearly 90,000 tons of U.S. milling wheat. The March Chicago wheat contract is up 5 U.S. cents per bushel at $6.07. The March Kansas City hard red wheat contract is up 8 U.S. cents per bushel at $6.29. The March Minneapolis spring wheat contract is up 6 U.S. cents per bushel at $7.02. That's a look at the ice futures in U.S. markets for Friday, February 2nd. In Winnipeg for MarketsFarm.com, I'm Adam Polishati.
Take command of productivity with the New Holland T5 Series tractor available at Butler Farm Equipment in Fort St. John. With 4 easy-to-use transmissions, fuel-efficient engines, and a choice of comfortable agronomic cabs, it's easy to find the model that's right for you. These are heavy-duty but nimble utility tractors with 4-wheel drive and big power to help you do a wide range of jobs, from loader work to speedy transport. See a T5 tractor today at Butler Farm Equipment in Fort St. John and take command.
The opinions expressed during this show do not represent those of this station. If you've missed any of this show, you can follow the podcast at energeticcity.ca. Now, an in-depth look at the news and information shaping our community. This is Moose Talks with your host, Doug Craig, on Moose FM.
Welcome to the show. A little later on today, we're going to meet Brandon Broderick, a Tumbler Ridge photographer who is Canadian Geographic magazine's Photographer of the Year. We'll talk a bit about his career roaming the wilderness of northern BC for that perfect wildlife photo, of which he has quite a few. They are stunning photographs. I can't wait to talk to him. But first, a snowmobiler tragically died last week in an avalanche near Chetwynd. It's the first avalanche death in BC so far this year. To talk a bit about how that death could have been prevented and some safety tips and training you really ought to have while you're out and about in the alpine backcountry, we're joined now by Dave McAleney of Highmark Avalanche Safety. Dave, welcome to Moose Talks.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for being here. I think for people who don't necessarily know the whole story about what happened, I wondered if you could start by kind of telling us a bit about what happened to this snowmobiler. I know you weren't there personally, but you know, you've heard what happened. You know what's on the record. So
for sure, absolutely. So setting the stage a little bit, I guess that weekend we hadn't had a lot of change in the weather for a couple of weeks, and so things were pretty stable. And then we had a huge storm come in, and we had over 50 centimeters of snow falling in just a little over a day.
Wow.
So there was like a huge amount of new snow that got added into the system, so to speak, and it really kind of elevated the hazard across the board. And in this situation, there was a group of 3 individuals, and again, like I say, what I'm getting is reports from people that were there. I wasn't directly involved for the rescue or the recovery. But there was a number of groups in the area, in the riding area at the same time. But this one group of 3 was kind of doing their own thing, and one of the riders triggered an avalanche on the slope. They were Highmarking, which is where individuals sit at the bottom of a hill and they take turns riding up the hill one at a time. And one of the individuals got stuck, and I think a second individual went up to try and help the stuck individual. So there was 2 on the slope, and then when it avalanched, there was one that was partially buried, the one that was fully buried, and then the one that ended up not being buried at all, or not consequentially. So they were able to rescue the guy on the surface, but unfortunately, because the individual who was buried didn't have a transceiver or a beacon, they weren't able to find him. And so they ended up going to look for help to try and start a wider search. And they found a couple of other groups that were kind of in the area that responded to the call, and they started searching, and they were able to find him with a probe line technique. But unfortunately, it took quite a lot of time to kind of get that going, and it was too late by the time they found him. So
Is it hours we're talking about it took them to find, as far as you know?
I believe it was under an hour. I've heard anything from 40 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, like, the window for an avalanche burial is so small. The statistics we have right now are that you have about 10 minutes.
Oh my
is
goodness.
your window. There's a lot of air inside snow, but it doesn't move well. So what happens when your face is buried, and you only need to be buried, a couple of inches down, and then the carbon dioxide that you breathe just forms a bubble in the snow around your head, and eventually you just exhaust all the oxygen in that little area immediate to you, and then you asphyxiate. So it's very similar to like putting a plastic bag over your head, kind of, right? Like, there is air there, and you have a amount of time, but it'll run out very quickly. So
I think I read one story. I mean, you said it only takes a couple inches. I think he was in 4 feet, or the snowmobiler was under
this individual
4 feet.
he was deeper than that. But it still wasn't considered a deep burial. It was like a normal burial. And then once they did locate him, they were able to dig him out very quickly with only a couple of minutes of digging time. So
man, what a tragedy. It's even hard just to kind of hear about it. Let's break it down a bit. I mean, you said they triggered the avalanche. Was there something they could have done differently, as far as you know, from what you've heard about what happened, that maybe wouldn't have triggered that avalanche? Or is that part of the risk when you go out? How do you avoid triggering an avalanche, but how is it you make sure that you can be found in an avalanche or get out of the way of an avalanche?
Yeah, absolutely. Those are both good questions. The first one is prevention, right? Like, once you are caught in an avalanche, like, once that happens, then you're at the mercy of physics. And there's really not a lot you can do. So the huge thing to do is prevention. Like, just don't get there in the first place. And so a lot of education and safety is focused on that. Like, just know where avalanches happen and know when to avoid them when the danger is high. Fortunately, avalanches consistently happen on slopes with slope angles of 30 to 45 degrees. So below that, there's too much friction and the snow won't move, even if there is like a failure in the snow. And above that, the snow generally kind of self-stabilizes, on 50 plus degree slopes. You don't get a lot of avalanches there. So it's that 30 to 45 degree window where avalanches happen. Unfortunately, that's also where, as skiers and snowmobilers, a lot of the best riding is found. But basically, when the avalanche danger is high, like it was this past weekend, your best bet is to just choose different terrain and focus on areas with lower slope angles and less consequence if something were to happen. So prevention, just not putting yourself in that situation, is always the best place to start, and sort of the number one thing you can do. One thing you can do, though, if you are caught, is wearing the proper safety gear. And so, like, airbag packs help keep you either on the surface or at least closer to the surface if you are buried. But the biggest one is having that beacon, because essentially it's a radio frequency device that sends out a pulse, and other beacons can search for it. So if you're buried and the avalanche stops moving, and there's just this white parking lot of snow, right? And somewhere underneath there is a person with a ticking clock, and that transceiver or beacon when you switch it to search mode, looks for the signal of that buried person, and it just guides you straight in. It's got arrows and numbers, and it basically you just walk in this direction until you get right there to that localized area, and then that's when you can start digging and looking for them. So that really, that technology has saved a lot of lives because of that. It shortens that window, right?
Yeah. And if I remember right, the snowmobiler did not have one of those.
This whole group, his group did not have them. Yeah. And then, of course, the other one is take some kind of a course, get some education to know, how to find better terrain, like how to make good terrain choices, and how to get the gear and how to use the gear properly, right? So a lot of avalanche safety courses focus on both of those things, like the prevention aspect and then also the rescue aspect. So if something, do the best you can to avoid it, but then if something does happen, then you have the tools and the skills and the training to know how to sort of, take care of the problem. It's like first aid, right? Like the best thing to do is to not get hurt, but if you do, at least if you know CPR or how to control bleeding, then you can keep it from getting worse.
So with the weather the way it's been, and I mean, I know we're in Fort St. John, and the weather here will be different than it is there, but was really warm up until kind of the end of December.
Yeah.
Got really cold, got really warm again now this week. I mean, even where they were in kind of the Hasler riding area, was that a factor in sort of the situation that maybe came about? Was just sort of
it was definitely. The biggest single factor was that big storm, that 50 centimeters of new snow. The avalanche danger can change very quickly. Like it can change in a matter of hours. So it is very hard to sit here in Fort St. John or wherever and look out the window and say, okay, I think this is what the avalanche danger is. But fortunately, we don't have to kind of guess. There's a really good forecasting system in place for the mountain areas through Avalanche Canada. In Canada, we have one of the best public avalanche forecasting and safety programs in the world. We're widely considered a world leader in avalanche safety. And so there is a forecast for any area that you want to go ride, and you can just go and see, it's put out daily for everywhere in the Pine Pass, Tumbler Ridge, southern BC, northwestern BC, and you can go and see, and they'll tell you, okay, the danger is considerable today, or the danger is low, or the danger is moderate, or whatever the danger is based on what's happening in that area. And then you can sort of on their website, they break down, what does considerable mean? What does that mean for you in terms of how likely an avalanche is to happen and how you should behave and stuff. So we don't really have a lot of guesswork to that, right? Get that information, get that forecast before you go, and then what you should be expecting and sort of how to behave once you get there.
Does the current weather conditions, when, say, you're in the area, does that play a huge role in what could cause an avalanche as well? Or is it really about, as you say, and I know it's a specific situation, but it was the 50 centimeters of snow kind of all at once that happened. But if it was a sunny day, if it was cold and windy, would it have mattered?
It can. There's a lot of things that can affect snow stability and the likelihood of avalanches. It's a rabbit hole that you can fall way down. But there's a lot of things, essentially anything that's a big sudden change. So, if it's been cold for a long time, then it gets really warm really quickly. Or if it's been really calm for a while and then we get a big wind event. If it's been, hasn't had any new snow for a long time and then we get a whole bunch of new snow. There's a whole bunch of different factors that can kind of contribute to an instability. We could get rain in the spring when we get those first kind of really hot sunny days in April. There's a lot of different kind of factors that can sort of contribute to stability, avalanche likelihood and stuff. So again, that's a lot of stuff to kind of pay attention to. But the best thing for most people, unless you really want to nerd out about weather and snowpack and stuff, the best way to do it is just go get the forecast, right? It's like the weather. You could sit here and decide, we want to know, should I wear a coat? Should I take a coat with me today, right? And you could talk about the 500 millibar flow and the high ridge of pressure building over Alberta and the frontal system in the Pacific. And really what you need to hear is there's a 70% chance of showers this afternoon. Cool, taking a jacket with me. That's kind of what most of us need, right? And it's there. The information is there for us to kind of go get it. So...
All right. Well, I mean, you've already talked a bit about what you should be doing. So let's talk a bit more about that. Whether you're snowmobiling, if you're hiking, you're ice climbing, whatever it happens to be, and you're in the backcountry, in the alpine backcountry. I mean, what are some of the things you should always have with you in these situations? Because an avalanche can happen, right?
Yep. Really good question. So for the avalanche perspective, absolutely. The three things you need are the beacon, the probe, and the shovel. The beacon is so that we can find you or that you can find the buried person. And then the probe and shovel are to find and then dig out that person. Because you can just imagine, if you're trying to dig through 4 feet of snow with your hands, it's not efficient, right? So a good small, lightweight aluminum shovel is really key there, right? And a probe helps you localize the person. Once the beacon gets you to within a few feet of them, the probe helps you find them exactly where they are under the snow, and then the shovel gets you there. So those three pieces are kind of the three most important avalanche safety pieces. And then there's a few other things, sort of bigger picture, just that you should have in general. You should have some kind of first aid equipment. You should have some kind of a way to communicate, whether that's like an InReach or Zoleo. Like there's a ton of different technologies there now.
Yeah.
But some kind of way to get help and let people know if something happens, even if it's not an avalanche, even if it's just, like a twisted ankle or something, right? That you can reach out and get search and rescue or get a hold of friends or whatever. And then just the basic kind of like food and water and clothing to be able to take care of yourself for longer than you expect. Like if you're going for the day, think about what you would need if you had to spend a night. If you're going for 2 nights, think about what if you had to spend 3 nights.
Yeah.
And just kind of be prepared for things to be a little bit worse than you expect them to be.
Yeah. And I suppose also like make sure that people who love you know what your plan is, because then if you deviate from it, there may be something going on, right?
And that's something Search and Rescue advocates for really hard, is have a trip plan, leave it with somebody, and then let them know when you're going to be back so that they know when to start worrying. So for myself, for example, I always let a couple of friends know, hey, I'm going here, and I'll check back in with you by 6 p.m. or 9 p.m. or whatever I expect, right? And then if something comes up and I'm going to be longer, I have that InReach, and I can just message to be like, hey, a sled broke down. We're going to be a couple hours later than we thought, but everybody's okay. And, we're just going to be back at 10 instead of 9 or whatever, right? But then we have a place to start looking for you. Search and Rescue then knows not only that you're missing, but also where you were going to go and what you roughly plan to do, so that they're able to know where to start kind of that search process, right? And then that's just a really good habit to get into, even like hunting, fishing, jet boating, just kind of outside year round.
Yeah. All right, one last thing here. We got about a minute left with you here, Dave McAleney from Highmark Avalanche Safety. Somebody's listening now and say, okay, I could be better prepared. I could use that training, all that good stuff. It's a good resource. Where can you start to kind of find out when can I get this training? Where can I learn more about this?
Great question. So for avalanche safety, avalanche.ca is the place to go. That's the public page for the Avalanche Canada, which is the public forecasting body. There's a huge amount of information in their website, so go there. For just general sort of backcountry safety, Adventure Smart is a program that Search and Rescue in BC runs, which is education and like outreach focused. A ton of information there. And if you're looking for like specific avalanche education, my company, Highmark Avalanche Safety, we do avalanche courses for winter recreationalists, so skiers, snowshoers, snowmobilers, showing you kind of like how all those things work and how to put all the pieces together. So.
All right. Well, Dave, I really appreciate you taking a few minutes to chat with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming by.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. That's Dave McAleney. Whoops, wrong mic there. Dave McAleney with Highmark Avalanche Safety. We'll be right back to talk with Canadian Geographic's Photographer of the Year, Brandon Broderick, right after this on Moose Talks. Do you have some good news you'd like to share with the community? We here at Moose FM want to share your positivity every weekday. Whether you're fundraising for the SPCA or saw someone doing a good deed in the community, we want to hear from you. Email us at reception@moosefm.ca and we'll share your good news right after the 7:30 a.m. news and on our Facebook pages. Good news is brought to you by Frontier Law.
You know this big wall we don't know what to do with?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking a big golf course mural.
On the living room wall.
Yeah. I could tee off and hit balls at it. It'll feel like I'm really golfing.
And you're not concerned about the balls bouncing off and breaking things?
I'll wear a helmet.
Need a place to practice your golf game? Hi, Victoria here from Lake Point Golf and Country Club, where our new golf simulators are ready to help you work on your game. Plus, Lake Point is the only authorized Lululemon dealer in Fort St. John. Swing by the lake or visit lakepoint.ca.
Most of us have very little free time, so why waste it cleaning? Hi, I'm Alicia from Freedom Cleaning and Organizing. When I started this business, my only goal was to make people's lives easier and give them more freedom. You shouldn't be spending your evenings, weekends, or days off cleaning. Let us take care of that for you. It's what we do, and we love doing it, residential or commercial. Get in touch with us at Freedom Cleaning and Organizing, where your clean is our business. Visit us, freedomcleaning.ca.
The next Work BC Fort St. John job fair is coming to the Pomeroy Hotel and Conference Center February 8th from noon until 6. So if you're searching for the next step in your career, we'll have dozens of businesses from all over BC that are recruiting people like you. So drop by with a resume and see where your career will take you next. The Work BC Fort St. John job fair is brought to you by Streamflow Industries Limited, BC Corrections, and Kanuma Resources Limited, and will be at the Pomeroy Hotel and Conference Center February 8th from noon until 6. For more details, go to fsjjobfair.ca.
Watch this show live on Facebook or download the podcast at energeticcity.ca.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Dub Craig. My next guest is Canadian Geographic magazine's Photographer of the Year. He's won other awards from that magazine before, and his photography, by the way, is absolutely stunning. I suggest you look him up right now and see some of these amazing photos he's taken. His name's Brandon Broderick, and I believe he's joining me from Tumbler Ridge this morning. Brandon, welcome to Moose Talks.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you. You're back home in Tumbler Ridge, right? Have I got that right?
Yes, I'm in Tumbler Ridge right now. Yep.
Yeah, and I think you had told me when we were setting this interview up, like you've just come home from kind of another journey where you're out taking photographs. Isn't that right?
Yeah, so I was just up in the Northern Rockies, near basically between Fort Nelson and Watson Lake. The reason I went up there is because originally I got an email saying I had 2 photos that were finalists in the Photographer of the Year contest, and I was told you needed a minimum of 3 to become the overall winner.
Oh,
so I thought I was a finalist in the wildlife category, so I was like, okay, well, I gotta do better, I guess. So I need to book another trip and go up there. So so I ended up winning overall, which was a complete shock to me. But this trip was already booked, so I went and I was supposed to be up there for 5 days, but I ended up being there for about 8. Just looking for links, not finding any of them. I found fresh tracks on my 7th day there, but at some point I just had to get home.
wow. So the first 6 days you had nothing. 7th day you had a bit, and he was like, no, this just isn't going to happen this time, I guess. So, I mean, that's kind of got to be the story of your life as a wildlife photographer, right? I mean, you're just roaming the hills, hoping to catch some of these guys with some science attached, of course, following tracks and whatnot. When did this start for you, Brandon? When did you decide, I really like taking pictures of wildlife and I'd like to do this more?
So I bought my first digital SLR back in 2007, and it came with a small kind of cheap zoom lens, but I used it for black bears and, Ontario wildlife where I'm from. And I eventually moved west and just got further and further into it. In the last 10 years, I've basically just done whatever job I need to pay the bills and put fuel in my tank to allow me to go out and keep trying to find wildlife to photograph. So it's just been financially probably not the best call, but it's I have no regrets. It's been fun, and yeah, like you said, it's definitely more normal than not to go out and come back without seeing anything, without even touching my camera. A lot of podcasts and music get listened to, so it's great. There is lots of entertainment out there because I do spend a lot of time in my vehicle, especially with the lynx stuff, because they can move far. There was a collared lynx in the Yukon that they tracked that just walked 1,000 kilometers. Like,
wow.
I can't walk that. That's
Yeah.
into another province. So, yeah. So I spend a lot of time in the vehicle. Lots of time hiking too. If I find a good area that looks good, then lots of hiking. But yeah, so about 15-ish years I've been doing this in total. Last 10 I've been really focused, and the last year I've been doing it full time.
Mm-hmm. Did you move to Tumbler Ridge in northern BC because you knew, there's a lot of great wildlife up here? Or is that sort of like incidental, that there was a job, you came, and you were like, well, look where I live?
So I was in Terrace in the Northwest for just under 11 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
And then my wife got a job here in Tumbler Ridge. So I was definitely interested in checking out this basically part of the province. I spent a long time in the Northwest. I've always wanted to do a photo book of all of northern BC, so I need to photograph the Northeast. So I jumped on the opportunity to come here. I was very excited when she got the job opportunity. And I mean, there's dinosaur tracks here.
Yeah.
I don't know if people really realize that. You can see where a dinosaur walked. It's insane. So that's just really cool. And yeah, there's lots of wildlife here. I don't get many good photos here though, because there's just, I don't know if it's the hunting pressure that a lot of these animals get or what it is, but they're a lot more skittish, less curious than I find when I go into more remote places. I know people use dogs to chase cats, lynx, and cougars up trees to hunt them. So yeah, it's a tough life they have here, and I don't blame them for not wanting to spend much time with me. But I do see lots here, but I do like to go to the Northern Rockies, down to Jasper. I try to branch out, and like I said, I'm trying to cover all of northeastern BC. So I just get out as much as I can.
Mm-hmm. So you find you have more success kind of generally the more remote of an area you happen to be in, just because the animals maybe haven't seen humans as much, I suppose, eh?
There's that. And I mean, the flip side is also true though, because you can get, like if you go to Jasper, there's elk that are so used to people. Like you can go get tons of elk photos there all day long. So animals that are more habituated to humans, except for bears that are, feeding on garbage and stuff, that's not good to, spend time with them to further their, acceptance of humans. But, so I don't know. Some animals are more okay with it. And it differs between individuals within a species too. Like, you can have a wolf that's real curious and wants to hang out, and you can have the complete opposite, one that won't even, you see it from a kilometer away and it's already gone. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's why I like to put as much time in the field as I can, and that just kind of, eventually puts the odds in my favor.
Do you find you have to go out with kind of a goal in mind? Like I'm trying to snap a photo of a brown bear, or I think you've mentioned lynx is kind of the Canada lynx is your favorite animal to photograph. Do you go out looking for that specifically? And then, obviously things can happen and you can end up with other photographs that you get. But when you're planning a trip, is it like this trip, I want to get this, and I'm hoping to capture maybe even this moment if I'm lucky enough? Is that sort of how you prepare, or do you find it's more like, let's go up there and sort of see what happens?
It happens both ways.
Yeah.
Like this most recent trip up north, lynx were my primary focus, but I also wanted some snowy bison. I wanted a good moose photo. There's lots of stone sheep and caribou up there. So in this instance, lynx were my, my goal, but I'm also open to other opportunities. I'm not gonna be like, well, that's a bison, I'm here for lynx, I'm not gonna waste my time with that. So, and then other times I just will pick a new, resource road to drive down and just go and just kind of be open to whatever comes to me. Same with landscapes. If there's a waterfall I really want to photograph, I can kind of have that more in my head, compositions and stuff, especially if I've been there before. And then other landscapes kind of happen just on the way looking for wildlife. So just being open to, possibilities and different opportunities is pretty key. I don't know. I'm just rambling. Yep.
No, it's wonderful, Brandon. I love hearing about this. Believe it or not, though, we're already almost out of time. So I'm going to have to book you on to come on again because I feel like I have 1,000 questions for you. But this final one is, do you ever go out in the wilderness without your camera, with the intention of just going for a walk? Or do you find I got to have it with me all the time? Because what if I see this moment unfolding and I want to make sure I capture it?
Yeah, I go out all the time without my camera. It's nice to not think about it and to just, we always have our phones with us. So there is some kind of camera, but in terms of, wildlife, there's lots of opportunities where I've not had my camera, saw something amazing, hopefully that happens again. It never does, but you got to hope for it. But then there's also times where I see something incredible and I have my camera and I'm still unable to get it just because a lot of these moments are pretty fleeting. So, I do love just getting out, hiking, just being in nature. Yep.
Wonderful. Well, Brandon, I'm really appreciative of the time you made with us for this morning. Congratulations on being Canadian Geographic's Photographer of the Year. And again, I'm going to have you on again sometime and we'll chat more, okay? Thanks so much for being here, Brandon.
Yeah, thank you.
You're very welcome. That's Brandon Broderick, Canadian Geographic's Photographer of the Year. Again, look him up. Some stunning photos that were in that competition and just in general. We'll be right back to wrap things up here on Moose Talks. Get recertified in half the time with Alpha Training. Register now for their Occupational First Aid Level 1 recertification course that meets requirements for WorkSafe BC Occupational First Aid Level 1, Canada Labour Code Basic First Aid, and Alberta Occupational Health and Safety. And the best part? You can renew your unexpired OFA Level 1 certification in just 4 hours instead of 8. To learn more about the Occupational First Aid Level 1 recertification course, visit alpha-training.ca.
Camping season is closer than you think, and now is the perfect time to gear up and save during Traveland Grand Prairie's Early Bird Show and Sale, February 1st through 4th. Save an extra $2,023 off in-stock 2022s and 2023s. Or spin and win up to $1,500 off on all other models, including used. Big factory rebates, buy early and save. Shop over 140 units indoors at our Early Bird Show and Sale, February 1st to 4th, Traveland RV Grand Prairie. Simply unbeatable.
The Backcountry Winter Cruiser is back, and we want to see you at all the different events this winter. Sledding in the park, skating at the Pomeroy, or just taking in a hockey game. We'll be at as many events as we can, but we need your help. Email us, reception@moosefm.ca, and let us know what event you're hosting. Moose FM will be everywhere with the Backcountry Winter Cruiser, supported by Murray GM, the Fort St. John Co-op, the historic Red Barn Pub and Grill, FSJ Return It, and Windsor Plywood.
Windows, window coverings, windshields. At Alpine Glass Windows and Doors, we do it all. Class up your room with powered smart blinds from Hunter Douglas, or come see our selection of Hunter Douglas roller shades, fabrics, and cellular shades. Need to update your windows and doors? Alpine Glass is your source for Geldwin and Plygem windows and doors. Plus, when it comes to windshield repairs and replacements, we handle ICBC claims for you. To learn more, visit alpinewindows.ca or give us a call at 250-785-6409.
What's better than one Snacker Wrap for $5? Two Snacker Wraps for $5! For a limited time at KFC, enjoy two delicious Snacker Wraps for just $5 bucks! Available in both classy and spicy. The wraps feature a crispy chicken tender, lettuce, and either pepper or spicy mayo, all wrapped in soft white flour tortilla. They're delicious, perfect for on-the-go snacking, and as an added bonus, affordable! Two Snacker Wraps for $5! Available now for a limited time only at KFC, 100th Street, Fort St. John.
You're in good hands at Golden Hands Barbershop. Haircuts, skin fades, hot towel shaves, hair design, beard trim, and lineup, they do it all. Plus, walk-ins are always welcome. Golden Hands Barbershop, open 7 days a week on 100th Street in Fort St. John and also on Facebook. Show some love this Valentine's Day with Peaceful Pages. Stop in and see their selection of Valentine's box cards for kids and adults, date night idea books, couples devotionals, plus jewelry including necklaces, earrings, and bracelets. Peaceful Pages Christian Bookstore on 101st Ave in Fort St. John.
Moose Country weather.
Cloudy start to today, then it turns to a mix of sun and cloud. We'll see a high of +2 later on. Partly cloudy to start tonight, turning to cloudy near midnight. 40% chance of flurries late this evening and overnight as well. We'll see the wind pick up out of the northwest, 30 km/h, gusting to 50 near midnight. Low to -8, feels like -16. Tomorrow, cloudy, turning to clear sky later in the morning. High of -4 and sunny and -5 for Sunday.
Our community first. This is Moose Talks with Dub Craig on Moose FM.
My thanks to Dave McAleney and Brandon Broderick for joining us today. If you'd like to hear this episode again, or if you'd like to hear an old episode of Moose Talks, make sure you check out the energeticcity.ca podcast page. You'll find past episodes of this show there, along with episodes of Secrets of the North and Before the Peace archived for your listening pleasure. Take some time to listen to some excellent locally produced podcasts today at energeticcity.ca/podcasts. That's our show. Jordan Prentice and Trey Lopashinsky are the producers of Moose Talks. I'm Dub Craig. Be well.
Join us next Friday at 10 a.m. for another episode of Moose Talks, a weekly talk show about Fort St. John and the North Peace. Be a part of the conversation with the